Greetings and welcome to our Safing live stream. It looks like everything is up and running. That is nice.
Or so.
Today we're gonna talk about the TunnelVision situation that has been going on and how it impacts VPNs and how it does not impact SPN and why it is. But we also want to get into questions. So if you're live, this is the mainline topic, but you can always ask questions and we will see to like which ones come up, and we want to sort of like get to them as we have time.
Mm-hmm.
Great. First things first, I want to address, yeah, exactly. You're already looking at it.
I have no idea.
My hair situation. I'm sorry, I finished Final Fantasy last week after months of steadily going through it, the remake on PC, and apparently it got into my hair. I have no clue. I tried to get rid of it. It's not working. So I assume it's infectious. So if you're playing Final Fantasy, make sure that you get your hair situation under control.
I do think that I'm immune to that though.
Who knows? Who knows? So, and apparently I confused the remake with the Rebirth thing, and I wasn't aware that that's not available on PC. I was always looking like, when is the open world coming? When is this coming? But it's not coming because it's like not on PC yet. And I'm like, oh gosh. But works beautifully on Pop! OS is what I gamed it on. So if you're waiting on the Linux train. Oh, Dylan is playing Rebirth at the moment, but it's PS5 exclusive as far as I understood. Did not buy a PS5. Back in the day when it was new, it was sold out, and now I don't care. So, also I'm a PC gamer. So, yeah. Okay, let's get into the mainline topic.
Okay.
TunnelVision. Can you give us a brief overview what TunnelVision is? Maybe also where it comes from. Maybe you have an idea why it blew up to like recently. I mean, it was in an Austrian newspaper, which is not covering tech.
Yeah,
usually
it got into like mainstream, like normal people news in Austria. That was weird. So
what's going on there?
So someone kind of rediscovered something that a select group of people have been knowing for quite a while. I think it's just kind of the internet is very complex, and if you just start sticking together technology of which you don't fully understand each and every one of them, you will have something like a misunderstanding between these components. And that's normally what in information security theory is called a vulnerability. If there's a misunderstanding about a concept, about a protocol, about how something works between two components, or in that case, the misunderstanding was kind of from the people building technology. They didn't fully understand all the components, so they missed out on a couple of critical parts in there. Of course, a good chunk of that is like, or everything of this is actually meant to be like this. It's just that like plugging the technology together just creates options of configuration that are undesirable.
Exactly.
For some cases, but for other cases, that's perfectly desirable, and people want that. So it's difficult, and because it's also kind of in especially corporate networks, you want to configure everything from a central standpoint. So the network takes a big part in that configuration and stuff like that. So that's what DHCP is for.
But let me quickly.
Okay.
It's also like because you were saying a vulnerability and you were going into
that's a theory, but
exactly
kind of misunderstood. Why is it here? Because on the one side, it's supposed to be here because we want that functionality. On the other side, for the people using VPNs for privacy, it's a vulnerability for them because they misunderstood the system.
Probably, but we can, and that's exactly like for privacy, that's an expectation, and that's partly the thing. Like that's where I wanted to sort of like give this nuance in there as well. The reason why the TunnelVision situation is an issue is because there's the expectation that all this traffic is private and not just secure. And VPNs are not built for privacy, so there's a difference between expectation and configuration and actually what is all what can be done on the client itself and so on. So I think that's where stuff is going in. Quickly, I wanted to address TCH as well. We're doing good, I guess, fairly good at the moment. If you just tuned in, my hair currently has a bad case of Final Fantasy, and I'm not sure why that is. But other than that, I'm good. Okay, so I feel like this is important to get here, like in regards to vulnerabilities and stuff like that. It's also always the matter of when you use a tool, what do you expect it to be?
Exactly.
You know,
and
like
that's exactly what the theory says creates a vulnerability. If your expectation, if your understanding from a system differs from reality, that is definitely a bug. But when that creates an issue on the security or privacy spectrum, then this is a vulnerability in the theory. Yeah. So and also interesting, like how they, the people who rediscovered this again, how they discuss kind of, hey, is this a vulnerability? Well, it depends and stuff like that. So they're open about that. They're not kind of calling it, oh, it's a vulnerability, but they did get assigned a CVE for it, so that's interesting, which is uncommon because I feel it covers the issue is the combination of standardized technology. There's not kind of this one product that's being affected. It's actually everything is expected behavior if you've managed to read and understand all internet standards. There is no surprise in here.
Okay.
There is no surprise. Everything is working as expected. It's just that the expectations of companies that build privacy VPNs did not match reality, so it is a vulnerability for them.
Or maybe
not
they knew
for other people.
Or maybe they knew about it. I feel like this has happened with the other news that came out this week with Mulwet, where they're trying to mitigate traffic analysis. They're just sort of like, we cannot fix this, or we don't have an idea on how to fix this, so we don't talk about it, which is always like an option as well. And I'm not saying that there's malice behind it. It's just like people, and we had this discussion as well. We have it now in our privacy policy about how our update systems work. We were sometimes when you are into network security, you know that people don't know how the internet works. And sometimes you're in the situation where like, if we open up, if we start explaining this, people will have so many other questions and we would have to tell them so much stuff about how the internet actually works, and they will check out at one point in this journey, and so they will never understand it completely, and they will misunderstand it, and then they will maybe attribute malice where there is none, because it's just how the internet works, and you cannot change that so fundamentally. But we did try in some regards with how the SPN works, or we did actually like. Not how the internet works, but how your connections work. And we will get into this in a little bit. Yeah. We will get into this a little bit later. But I feel like with that, you're right. Like the expectation has been different. It has been different in the application. And VPN as a technology, of course, was not built for privacy. It was built for, as you were saying and going into earlier, like companies, centrally managed networks, and then bridging between two company networks over the open internet together. That's sort of like where this all was envisioned and built for in the beginning. So like you're saying all this has been known, all this is expected behavior. Yeah. But like maybe now let's get into what is the expected behavior. and why is it an issue when you want to apply VPN technology for privacy, and maybe reiterate what you think the expectation is, and then where it diverges.
I think it's easier to understand if we just work ourselves from the ground up and look at what technologies are in play here, and how do they work, and what are they meant to do, because then it becomes really clear really fast, like where the issue actually is. Of course, like you have device, you're connected to the internet, so you have one cable or Wi-Fi cable going out from your device, and that's kind of your connection to the internet. So kind of your device is connected to the internet via this one cable, and all your traffic just goes on that cable, and that's it. There's not much fancy stuff going on there. But then kind of you start using a VPN as a technology. Not talking about a software company now, just technology. A virtual, the private is kind of not important in that case. It's about virtual networks. So a virtual network is kind of a virtual cable. It doesn't really exist. It's not really there. It's just kind of faked in software. You could say.
Saying something like the Wi-Fi cable?
The Wi-Fi cable, yeah.
Wait, what?
So,
it's in the air. It's around us. The virtual cables.
So then kind of you have one real cable going out from your device, and then you have one virtual cable going out from the device. Now your computer has a new situation has to deal with. Whenever there's a connection to the internet, it needs to decide where do I put it. Like I just had one cable before, it was easy to just put everything there. But now I have two cables. I have my internet cable and I have my virtual cable. So which one do I use? Which package do I send where? And for the basic things,
all is well. I'm just turning it up because Mad Lad is saying that the audio is too quiet. Yeah, just continue. All is well.
Okay, I think
it's me. I'm just changing the volume.
So how does your computer decide where to send packets to? The easiest way to decide that is, I have my real internet cable and I have an address assigned there, plus that address is part of a network. So that's kind of if the network it belongs to, and almost all cases that will be IPv4 private range, or like LAN range. So it's like 192.168.0.5, for example, and then 0.1 is your router. Kind of that's your LAN, and your computer knows it's part of this network, which consists of maybe 250 addresses. And so if your operating system has a packet that is destined for that network, it's like, wait, I'm part of this network. Like this interface, this cable is on that network. So I'll just, of course, send it there because that's kind of the best way. And the same thing for the VPN, the virtual network. It also needs some addressing in there. So sometimes they just use another private or LAN address range. So if your computer has a packet destined for that range, for that network, it's like, well, that's logical. Let's just put it there because it already belongs to the network, even if it's virtual. So that's easy, but normally you're not connected to the server directly on the internet that you're trying to reach. So your operating system doesn't know which one to use, and that's where the routing table comes in. The routing table is a kind of a table of information where to send packets if they're destined for a specific address range. That's kind of what your computer uses to decide where to put things. And so normally when you connect with your cable to your router at home. The router sends you your address and tells you, hey, you can send all your traffic to me because I'll just forward it to your ISP, and that ISP will forward it to the internet wherever you want to go. So pretty cool. But now that's kind of the standard use case. You can enable your VPN. That's cool. You can access resources in that VPN. For example, if you're using a VPN for your company, you can access internal servers through a VPN because they're part of that same local network, virtual local network, but still local network. But as soon as you kind of go more in the direction of privacy VPNs, they have to do something very different. The VPN then will tell your operating system, oh, you can send me all the traffic that you don't know where to put else instead of your router at home. I'll handle it. So it kind of sets the default route for all your traffic to go via the VPN instead of your normal internet. And that's kind of the whole reason you normally buy a VPN for, because you want all your traffic to go over there and not your normal internet. But that's something that the VPN itself doesn't control. It just asks the operating system, please be so nice and send me all your traffic.
Yeah, and of course, like, to chime in here quickly, the operating system has an incentive to do that as well. Like, VPN technology is fairly old, and so this is not an atypical behavior, and so it complies here and it works together with the VPN. But you're right, like, it is a VPN is just sort of like waiting for the traffic to come through it. And some VPNs, of course, like with kill switch capabilities, have veered a little bit into firewall capabilities, but they're very minimal and they're very limited in their capabilities usually. Also, when you're having something like an antivirus together with a VPN, still they're like next to each other and typically not integrated, because VPN technology is relying on this system integration very heavily to make improvements basically as well. What you're talking about there is a lot of routing as well, where shall packets go and stuff like that. The operating system, in the case of VPN, takes care of this.
Yeah.
And so you cannot turn off stuff like that because VPNs rely on this. Just to explain, like, this is typical and this has to be like this, basically.
Yeah, so this is kind of just the basic kind of how it works. So now that we know how important the routing table is, that the VPN works correctly, we need to ask ourselves, well, who has the power to change it? And of course, you can just open up a PowerShell or kind of bash on Linux and just remove routes, add routes, kind of do fun stuff until you break your internet.
Which people do.
Which can happen really fast if you're not careful. But who else can kind of change that? Of course, programs with enough privileges can just change that, that run on your device. Then the most notable thing that also changed that is, of course, DHCP. DHCP is a protocol built to make network management easier. So if whenever you plug a cable into your device, your PC needs a IP address to be able to communicate, but it doesn't have one. So it just sends a small packet out to the network asking, hey, can anyone give me an address? I need one. And normally your router replies with, yeah, sure, I'm the router here. Welcome to the network. Have fun. Here are your login details. Dinner is at 6, breakfast is 8, the normal stuff. Kind of you make yourself at home. And also gives you a routing table. Kind of tells you what part of the network you are. This is your IP address. That's our network. That's the boundaries. Kind of there's the fence. That's us.
Yeah.
Also,
that's a DNS server.
That's a DNS server. You probably need that one if you want to use names. And also can tell you about more routes. I'm like, oh, we have a neighbor over there. You can get cool stuff over there. And we have this other neighbor there, and kind of can tell you a lot of things about the network. And
just quickly, but typically, like in a home use case, you don't use these capabilities. So if you maybe have changed the DNS server in your router, which is then like your DHCP server as well. You might have done this, but all the other stuff, the routing table, if you don't know that your DHCP server could do that, that's okay. Like this is typically not used in a home environment, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's very, this is advanced network stuff. People don't touch you usually, but your computer and your router is capable of it. And this is where this comes in now. So
the router kind of advertises it as a gateway.
Yeah.
Which means you can send traffic to me, I'll forward it, and then yours decides on which gateway to use. So for example, if you have both a cable and a Wi-Fi connection, most operating systems will just prefer the cable because they assume this has a better quality, which is true for almost all cases.
Yeah, less interference.
Yeah, so, but the router can also attach more routes to it. So that's kind of a very, very, very common way how your device configures its network. So before we go to the next step, we have to look into how are routes prioritized. Because if the router says, hey, I'm a gateway, and the OS is sure I'll just send you everything, but there are other networks here and there. Maybe you have manually configured a route so that your device knows that, oh, there's this other network behind this other machine over there. So there's kind of a system of priority, and it works like this. The OS always looks for the most specific, which means the kind of best matching address. So of course, if it's your own address, of course that's kind of the best match, and you're kind of talking to yourself. If it's a local address you're part of, then that's pretty small probably. But kind of if you're like wanting to communicate with a neighbor network, then that will kind of be a bigger range. So it won't be like 200 addresses, might be 60,000 addresses combined into kind of one entry. And of course, the internet itself, IP version 4, that's 4.2 million addresses. That's kind of the /0. So that's kind of, if you want to address all addresses on the internet, IP version 4, that's 0.0.0.0/0. So that's kind of everything. And that route, the default route, takes the least preference. So every other route is checked first. And so what the TunnelVision, I'll call it vulnerability, does.
Now we're getting into the interesting bit. Less basics.
If there's an attacker that somehow is near enough on the network to you, most of the time sits on the on your network stack or in the network itself between you and the DHCP server, or it can place itself between you and the DHCP server by using another attack called ARP spoofing. It can kind of catch your request for, hey, I'm new here, I need an address, catch that address, forward it to the real one, get a real IP, and then modify that response to add more routes to it. So it kind of injects routes into the network configuration of your host. That is not wanted, that's malicious. We could try to, we as a society could try to improve DHCP security there. I don't know of any real attempts because there is just no trust anchor available to do anything like that.
Fancy term, trust anchor there. But I wanted to quickly then, so you're talking about different vulnerabilities here, different attack vectors, and you said very quickly, like asking for a new device. How often does this happen? Like that a device on the network asks, "Hey, I'm new here," because you said like this is what it does when it first comes on earlier, but it asks more often than that.
Yeah.
Why would it ask again? And who says how often do you ask?
So
and why would you want to change this setting maybe? Or
so that really depends on the network. Home networks usually try to generate a more stable IP attribution system. So the DHCP server sends you a response giving your IP address and also stating how long is this valid, how long may you use it. And for like home routers, that will be an hour, maybe even a day or a week, because you don't expect many devices in there, but it's nice for you if the addresses stay the same. So
you want your printer to keep the same, or
IP
when
address,
you're smart,
not like jump around. So kind of home networks are mostly geared towards making it semi-static, but still easy. So they're kind of up for longer things, longer timeouts. On the other hand, public networks like public Wi-Fi, hotel Wi-Fi, airport Wi-Fi, and so on, they have loads of devices going through, and these devices only stay for short periods of time. So in order for them not to exhaust their network pool, so the pool of available addresses, they will set very short timeouts. So your device will maybe have to request a new address every 10 minutes. And that's exactly the point where this attack can happen. At every one of these intervals, this attack can happen every time the device joins the network, and then from there at every interval.
Which is publicly known, like you can look up what the interval is as soon as you're part of the Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
And in addition, like you would use a VPN typically in a public setting. So exactly where this leasing is what it's called when you get an IP address, happens more often. That's where this attack is the most likely and easiest. Where the attacker has the most opportunity to actually get in and do some and inject those additional routes. And we have not explained what those routes can do, but you're already prepared us towards
exactly. So
the main route, the base, the 0000/0 is the weakest route because it covers everything, and the more specific route will get taken. So I'm assuming this injection is a more specific route then.
Exactly. So and it is really blatantly easy. What the attacker will do is will inject two routes with, instead of a /0 prefix, which the default, which the US controls, it will just inject two /1 routes. One for the first half of the internet and the second for the second half of the internet. And then you get all of the internet. And that's how the attacker can easily inject these routes and totally change where the traffic is going to. And for the operating system, that's a normal thing. That's not out of the ordinary. Of course, a /1 route is really weird for us as humans, but for a computer, that it's a valid IP address, a valid range.
Why not?
Yeah, sure, why not? That's what I'm here to do. Okay, whoop, there you go, traffic. Yeah. And
what happens at this point now?
So at this point, the attacker can control where all the traffic goes by default, and it can fully choose where to send that. And of course, for the attacker to have any gains, it will try to send that traffic toward itself instead of through the VPN where it will be encrypted. So the attacker wants to see the unencrypted traffic. So it just redirect the traffic to itself, the attacker can then see all of your data that's not already encrypted by other means, like
TLS, HTTPS, stuff like that.
Exactly. So
it does not break unencrypted. You're not talking about
it's not
HTTP
break, it doesn't
traffic.
break HTTPS.
Yeah,
of course.
exactly.
It doesn't even break the encryption of the VPN. It just disables it.
Yeah, because the packets don't go through the encryption process. But,
exactly.
And what information do they gain then? What do they see if they do stuff like that? Maybe to quickly get out ahead of the question.
Because we're looking at privacy VPNs, the whole thing you want to protect is your privacy. You want to protect what people can see you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're not kind of like if you're on latest tech and the servers you're talking to latest tech, it's better, but still there are IP addresses in there. Have to be. And
that's how the internet works.
They alone tell a lot about what you're doing out there. And occasionally
so they see what server you're connecting to.
Yeah.
Or intend to connect to.
Exactly. And it will be DNS request to and HTTP not headers, but HTTP host name through TLS, or sometimes a plain HTTP request without any encryption.
Yeah, which are less and less likely. But you're
true,
right. Like
true, but still can happen.
Yeah, yeah. In the header, you sometimes see the domain name. That's what you're already.
No, not the header of HTTP, but the TLS header, which has the domain name of the website you're surfing to in clear text, because the server needs to serve the correct certificate for you to be able to do the encryption
and stuff like that. So they would see where leakage. The packet is going from the IP address. This can never be changed, and in most cases they see the domain name as well.
Yeah, so it's just like using no VPN. It kind of just disables the VPN, and so kind of that's the whole thing. For the OS, this is not a vulnerability. That's just how things work. Yeah. It's a vulnerability for the companies that sell privacy VPNs, that sell the expectation that all traffic will go through their VPN instead of anything else. Yeah. So for them, it's a vulnerability because they have this disconnect between what they think or communicate is happening and what actually is internet standard and how that works.
And why does the kill switch not work for stuff like this?
Because the kill switch in most cases is just built to shut down any network traffic when the VPN tunnel breaks. Because if the VPN tunnel breaks, that has the same effect. The VPN interface shuts down. The US realizes, oh wait, that virtual cable is broken. So I have to remove the default route for that cable because it doesn't exist anymore, and switch the default route back to your normal internet. And that's kind of where the VPN kill switch kicks in and kind of stops all packets, because then you'd be leaking everything if your VPN connection goes down. But in the case of this attack, the VPN connection just stays alive. It just goes unused. Yeah. It just has no packets going through it anymore.
Which is not 100% true, even, because what you were saying as well is like a smart attacker could combine some attacks that the traffic going back still comes through the VPN, so you would see traffic through the VPN.
That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work.
That would not work.
Traffic wouldn't have to go through the attacker itself, but through the local network.
Okay.
But of course, the attacker can be smart and be like, haha, I know exactly what information I'm after, so I'm just gonna attach routes for example, the bank of that person.
Yeah. Okay, but that's very targeted.
Only the connections going to the bank of the person being attacked will go outside the VPN, and everything else will go inside the VPN.
That's very targeted.
Very targeted, but that's even harder to detect.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
that's true.
Because everything else will go through it. So if you have a self-check system that just like pings or kind of
sends a packet
and just checks if the IP address is the one of the VPN, that won't even trigger because that packet is still going through the VPN. Or for example, if you're targeting a specific VPN, you could just add more routes just for the VPN self-check IPs, and make sure that they still go through the VPN, kind of fool the VPN itself by adding routes for itself checks, and just do everything else, put everything else to your direction. So
you have to think like them to understand what they would do to then prevent them doing it. Just the reason why we think about that sort of stuff and why we're interested in it, why we looked at it. Also, I think I should have mentioned that earlier. The link to the thing discussing this is actually in the description right now, so you can look at it as well if you're interested. So if you want to take a read, they also go through networks and stuff like that, how the internet works basically, and to a certain degree, and stuff like that. You skipped like across a couple of the things that they talked about, just because we assume people who are interested in hearing us talk about SPN for the longest time probably have at least some basic understanding about how networks work and stuff like that. But DHCP still, and to that degree, I think is very uncommon. People don't use it like this typically in a home setting and stuff like that. So super interesting to go into that, and routing tables and stuff like that. People don't touch those usually. And I was not aware that you could sort of like have this more specific, like have your DHCP send you a table and then tell you, well, actually, I don't want you to send the stuff through your VPN. I wasn't aware that this is a thing. I mean, for me, this was news as well, even though it's old, but like, So I was not aware of this either, just to let you know. But you have been looking at into how the SPN should be built differently from the ground up, with stuff like this in mind, like how the internet works and how we should sort of like set our expectation as the guiding principle, and not just what is available in technologies. And then with the expectation in mind, start from the ground up and think about how can we ensure that stuff like this does not happen, and that we don't build upon expectations on expectations from other people who have built different things. That's what we have been talking about for the longest time. VPNs have not been built for this. It's a repurposing. And it's like, I don't know, yes, a paintbrush and a toothbrush is the same thing, but brushing, like painting your walls with a toothbrush or brushing your teeth with a paintbrush, causes issues. The expectation of the creator was different. Even though the product has a similar name and looks similar, like from a technology perspective.
And it works to some extent.
Exactly. You can paint your walls with a toothbrush. I would not recommend it. Maybe with an electric one, you can get into those crannies very good, and spray it all over you. Who knows? Okay. So we're now very deep into like the whole thing in regards to how the attack works, and if questions come up, we can go into some more details here as well. So please leave them in the chat if you want. But why is SPN not affected by this? What do we do different that we're not affected by this? Why are we not scared?
The easiest answer is that we're not dependent on the routing table. We don't need it.
We're not dependent on the routing table.
Yeah.
So we don't
care. No, we don't use it, and we don't care what's in it. That's because...
Why can we not care about it?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
SPN was built from the ground up with the idea of not being just a network, but being coupled with the firewall. Why? Because it just makes things really difficult for users. If it's a network service, you have to kind of do all the configuration yourself, all that stuff. But combined with the firewall, everything can be automatic. There's nothing you have to configure. There's nothing you can misconfigure. It's impossible because the firewall works together with the SPN and takes care of everything correctly.
So SPN without Portmaster would basically be super hard.
It would work quite different in how you connect to it, and most importantly, it would be a hassle.
Yeah, a hassle to configure.
Yeah.
Not a hassle in the protocol itself and stuff like that, but a hassle to configure. Partly the answer for all those people who are like, why can't we just have it on pfSense or something like that? Would be cool. We might look into it later, but it might be a hassle. I mean, if you're running pfSense, you know a thing or two about hassle with network stuff, but you probably also know what DHCP is.
Yeah. So, how does it work with Portmaster and SPN? Portmaster looks at every connection, finds out what the process is, checks all the rules, all the settings, and stuff like that. And if it decides in the end that the connection is allowed to go through and should route through the SPN, it changes the destination of that connection. So it's not the kind of the redirecting to the network is not in the routing table, it's in the firewall. So it happens before the US even thinks about routing.
No, you don't.
It's already decided, and how that works with the SPN currently is that it just redirects the connection back to itself. And that's always the absolutely highest priority when it comes to routing. Is it me? Yes. Thank you. End of story. There's no routes being even looked at because the system sees, oh, that's mine anyway. I'll just keep it. So
mine.
And
it's
then
not our connection.
and then kind of the Portmaster routes that connection back to itself, and then deconstructs it, just takes the data, and as Rafael lovingly calls it, beams it through the network, reconstructs the connection on the other side, and then it can go on and live its happy life. So that's why the SPN is by design not affected by any routing shenanigans. The firewall, Portmaster itself, is the only one who decides with absolute power where connections go. There is no possibility for misconfiguration on your part or from the system or anything. Portmaster decides, yes, it goes through it. If no, it doesn't. End of story.
Yeah.
So easy.
And calculates everything locally as well and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Super cool. I wanted to do a video about this, a quick FAQ video, and some of the stuff. What I wanted to do there as well was to sort of like start explaining. And you told me then this is not quite right, but I feel like I hope the people watching can actually benefit from this as well. Where I'm like trying to figure this out a little bit as we speak. So the situation with a VPN, and when like you brought up my comparison where I say like SPN is beaming, it's deconstructing it and sending it. So, and a VPN is just a tunnel which is redirecting the traffic. And that's sort of like what I then wanted to explain in this video was like, yes, a VPN does encryption, but the thing inside the VPN tunnel is always a valid packet on the internet. Every packet can be routed separately. So that's the reason why as soon as there's some leak, there's an issue because all the information is with every packet. And we deconstruct it and send it through. And so with us, if you would sort of like take one of the packets that's in an SPN, let's still call it a tunnel, but inside the SPN network, there, and you would try to look at it, there's not the information, it's not a routable packet. Like you cannot peel the onion encryption off and then figure out where this data would go to.
Yeah, first it's onion encrypted, so you couldn't look at it anyway. And if you could, there's no routing information there.
Exactly. Okay.
No one would have an idea where to send it because routing information is first transmitted separately. Yeah. And then the data follows because we can just save all that stuff, and we don't have to send the routing information with every packet and do a lot of useless work because the SPN is stream based anyway, so there is an encryption session on every hop you go through. So there's no need to retransmit that information all the time and just have additional work and risk.
Yeah. So if I could post-quantum, whatever, decrypt a VPN traffic, I would only have to have one packet to know where this information, like where the origin and destination server were.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have an SPN packet and I would decrypt it, peel off all the onion layers, I would still have no clue where the packet would come from and would
except
go
if you
next hop.
If you're able to find the first one, the packet that establishes the connection, then
which is of course way lower risk because for the whole transmission of data.
Well, yes, okay. Now we're going into details about like what are the implications of a quantum computer actually being able to decrypt.
I'm just saying.
Normally, if you can decrypt one packet of the data stream, you can decrypt others too, depending on which part of the connection you cracked, how many packets you saved. So SPN has perfect forward security, backward security. So we do all the stuff in cryptography that we can do today to make things extra safe. So even if there is a quantum computer, we make it as hard as possible for anyone to recover a significant amount of your data. But still, cryptography is very complicated.
Of course. I'm just saying, like, from a basic understanding, that's the issue with VPNs typically is that it's just a rerouting of valid packets.
I would say,
and with SPN, it's not.
Like I would say the biggest.
We're breaking it down, taking the data and sending that. And so this is not a valid packet in itself.
Yeah. The biggest issue I feel
needs to be reconstructed in the
with that is that it's a valid packet, meaning that it will be able to just take any other route through the internet, fulfill its duty, and return without you noticing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it can perform correctly without the VPN, which means you won't notice because it will just continue working as with the VPN.
Which, of course, on the other side is one of the issues with the SPN. Like if the SPN has an issue, then the packets don't return, and then it has to be reinitiated, the connection, stuff like that.
There are of course downsides to that too. We know that, and we're experiencing with the SPN, and we're trying to figure them out. But
we chose those sets of trade-offs, which is less, which can cause more headaches in that department. That we have to do more work to make sure all the packets are actually at the exit and then all come back because of the security and encryption chain and everything. Like we have to do all of that because we chose to follow the expectation that data that we say is going through the SPN actually goes through the SPN and not gets bypassed by some rogue faux DHCP, like whatever thing, attack vulnerability and stuff like that. And we don't even have to think about those too much. We still look at it. It's interesting to us. We still want to know. But it's something we are not affected by because we build with the expectation as a goal.
Yeah. We built SPN to be as solid as possible from the get-go. It's not kind of a mashup of technology. I think it would be fun to talk about kind of how does TunnelVision affect VPNs, kind of how can VPNs protect that, and in what position is Portmaster to be also have an impact here. Not saying we're doing this, just talking about what is possible,
which I like a lot. Like when we read about this and we're like, how can we protect VPNs? I thought was a super cool approach because I'm like, people watching this, I think most of them will know that I wholeheartedly believe that SPN is better than a VPN for privacy. but there are use cases for VPNs. And I always acknowledge this, and I understand.
Yeah. And there are better and worse VPNs. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So when you thought about like what can we like, how can we protect them, and yeah, we'll see how this would work. I'm just saying this might be a Portmaster Plus feature. I'm not 100% sure. But you thought about this as well, because it would be extra work for us, and it's not like this is part of the reason why we're like, okay, we would divert and like resources into this.
Yeah.
You can let us know in the comments below if you would like something like this, Portmaster protecting your VPN or not. We have for the longest time plans on how we might be better compatible with VPNs in general, because we see that some people, especially people who torrent, please use VPNs. Don't mess up our beautiful SPN with all of your stuff. Yeah.
All of your Linux access.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back them up through different means, like a VPN. Okay, so what are some of the ideas you're having, and to start the conversation about what Portmaster could do to protect
first,
TunnelVision attack?
Yeah. We haven't looked into VPN client and how they do protection. The guys that rediscovered this did, but I don't think they have concrete examples. They're all like some do this, some do that, blah blah. But I would like to just take time to quickly look at technical options, and that's just kind of thinking about it. That's not research we did, and it probably won't be complete. But kind of to set things up for how Portmaster could handle this. So of course, the easiest thing that VPNs can do is, and most clients have some kind of firewall functionality because they already have a kill switch, which is a very, very, very primitive firewall, which is just yes and no firewall. But it's effective at what it's trying to achieve. So what, of course, a firewall could do is to check the exact interface traffic is going out. So be like, okay, if the VPN expects that the default route is the VPN itself, it can collect all the other routes on there, and all traffic that the VPN thinks should go through default route through the VPN, and is not going to the VPN interface, can be blocked. So that's kind of a way to do it. Of course, you need to kind of update that list of routes, so kind of keep the routing table in the system in sync with the firewall app in order to really just block everything that's not supposed to happen, because routing table is dynamic, it can change all the time. So that's something.
That's how it's built.
Yeah, that's a very easy way how that could be done on there. Of course, something else they could do with their firewall functionality, which is maybe more complex, but they actually could start looking into DHCP messages and start blocking that. Of course, that is then could lead to problems with especially enterprise customers who actually need that DHCP option in order for them to work correctly. So that's another option VPNs could do. I'm not sure if there are any obvious others that VPNs could do. Kind of just block, either mitigate the attack itself, or block the attack itself, or mitigate the result of the attack. So that's kind of two things you could do. That would be viable. Not sure how many VPN apps do that, any of these. The first makes sense because it could potentially stop various attacks, and would actually be a always active kill switch that doesn't have the delay, which would be kind of an actual beautiful kill switch, instead of just what they're doing now with the yes/no firewall. Of course, it is way more complex, which means it introduces problems. So the incentive for VPN companies to do that is fairly low.
Who knows?
Unless they really pursue privacy with a lot of resources, because that's just cost, and we know how much that costs. We built a firewall, a big one. We know how much that costs. So so
We do.
there's a reason it took 7 years to do that, to come here.
To come here.
Yeah, to come here.
Like
But the firewall has been out for 2 or 3 years now. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
so-
would say so as well.
but still,
I would say so
we're
as well.
we're further than we were 2 or 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But still, that's a lot of time, a lot of resources that went into there.
We're coming up to the 1 hour mark, so questions can still come in. Let's do our typical end of live stream thingamajig where we are talking about nonsense while waiting for people to write stuff.
I still want to just cover real quick the Portmaster part.
Sure.
Okay.
Not nonsense, but people, please write the questions now so that we can read them and properly address them. I'd like to go in 5-ish minutes, so we can always go a little bit over, but just be aware, 5-ish minutes. Yeah.
So Portmaster, what could Portmaster do? I think the second option that VPNs could do, kind of just inspecting TCP traffic, would make sense.
And alerting the user maybe as well.
Maybe kind of working with alerts, stuff like that. Maybe kind of trying to be smart. We have bad experiences with trying to be smart, but
that's not true. That's not true. And what's also true is we have bad experience.
We're being always smart in the wrong places.
That's true. That is true. But we're also getting so often people who are like, oh, why am I getting notifications for this? Why am I getting notifications for this? Like, it's always hard to tell how much of a hassle those things actually are for different people. But I agree. Like, we have learned over the time to be careful with stuff like this. But okay, so maybe.
But there are like the obvious pointers, like a /1 range is weird for humans. That's something we could kind of look out for. Kind of try to implement a heuristic approach. Kind of, yes, DHCP can announce ranges, but only in these areas with these sizes. Kind of set good constraints on it. We don't have to kind of kill everything, because some people really want to use it, and it's okay, and it's there to be used because it's standard. It's here to be used, and it's expected. But we need to find a way maybe to reduce the abuse of that, and
which of course, like targeting a bank is a very small range, so that would not prevent this.
That is true, but then you could kind of try to figure out, because Portmaster is a firewall with a lot of information, you could figure out, okay, is the range that the device is the relation to that range, for example. Can we find out if that's the same company? So if you work for a company and Portmaster knows, okay, you're in a network of that company, and the DHCP server is announcing a range from the same company, then that's probably okay. So that's that's heuristical. There's room for errors, all that stuff. That's kind of stuff that Portmaster can do that pretty much nobody else can.
Yeah, could do. We're not doing it.
Yeah, we're not doing it right now because it's complicated. And,
but let us know.
It's still the job of the VPN provider to fix this. If we prioritize the future, that's cool. Maybe we get to it, but it's still they have to fix their stuff. It's a vulnerability for them, not for us, and we know that sometimes other people don't give too much about things, and we're happy to step in if there's demand, and we really think it's a big issue. That's why we're doing privacy, because there are too many people on the internet that just don't give too much, and we're fixing their stuff from our users' perspective. Of course.
True.
So stopping trackers is definitely fixing their stuff from our user perspective.
Yeah, they do.
They don't want that. We do.
Exactly.
Our users want to.
Exactly. 100%.
So that's kind of what Portmaster is about, fixing the internet for our users.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So definitely some fun ideas here that we can do. Yeah.
Super cool. Well, still see that there are quite a lot of people in the live stream. So thank you everybody for joining us. It has been basically the mainline topic for today. I'm so glad we had one. If you want us to talk about other stuff, things you found on the internet, things you want us to to look into maybe as well, if it has to do with network security, we're always interested. Shoot us an email. Email is in the description. Hit us up on Mastodon. Our handles are here as well. Or write in the comments below. Join us in the next live stream. Answering complicated questions live without preparation, of course, is typically a little bit harder, but we can try, of course, always.
We will try.
We probably
will attempt.
We probably will attempt. Yeah, you can count on that. But yeah, just let us know in the comments, and also regarding this VPN thing, let us know if you would like us to go into that, put resources into this. Also thoughts about putting it into Portmaster Plus, always welcome. I know that we have people in our community who understand that developers need to eat as well, and that not everything can be free. But yeah, so still, please let us know your honest thoughts, with you considering us as humans who have lives as well. So let us know. But also, big shout out and thank you to everybody who is supporting our work. Typically, we have seen, more and more people coming in nowadays, on Twitter, on Discord. Every time I check, we're increasing in people. It's super cool. So yeah, and also so much conversation on Discord is with blue names nowadays. I'm everybody I feel like is a Portmaster Pro subscriber, and super cool. Thank you for the support, and thank you for watching our live stream.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
have a good one. See you
in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, I think.
I think so.
Or
too.
maybe.
Otherwise, you will see in the live stream and in Portmaster, of course, as well. Bye.
Bye.